Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your afternoon is going well. Browns wrapped up the OTAs, getting ready for mandatory minicamp, which will be next Tuesday through Thursday. Mike Florio, Chris Sims from Pro Football Talk on what they expect from the Browns in 2024.
Man, if they could keep Watson healthy, and if he plays like he did when he was with the Texans, and that defense does what it – I mean, it's still – remember how we kind of had to get our arms around the Bengals as an elite team? It doesn't seem right that a team that has just been – yeah, I know they went to a couple Super Bowls in the 80s, but still, they'd gone through some stuff.
Yeah, been more bad than good.
Burrow.
Right.
Right. And the Browns, too, very recently, not good. Not good at all. Among the worst in the league for multiple years. It's hard to get used to that. But they're on the verge of really breaking through and being an elite team. And look at that division with the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens. And the Browns could be far better off this year than they were last year. They could be a much better team this year than last year, especially if Watson's healthy and effective, and now that Vrabel's on board healthy.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you're saying it right, Mike. I mean, the Browns are a Super Bowl team. They're a Super Bowl team, right? They haven't got Super Bowl play at quarterback yet. That's the problem.
With that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. And Quincy, if you're a detractor, the injuries are an excuse. If you're kind of neutral in it, the injuries are the reason they haven't gotten great quarterback play. But it doesn't have to be 2020 Deshaun Watson. If it's good quarterback play, this roster is really good, and they're Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun Watson's going to be asked to do a job, and that job's not going to be amongst the 5 most difficult jobs to perform in the NFL, right? That's the big thing. Are we asking Deshaun Watson to carry a team on his back to get to the Super Bowl? No, we're not. We're asking Deshaun Watson to be a part of something that's already kind of going. And if he can do that, then this team's chance to make the Super Bowl and all that stuff, it would be very high.
Yeah, and to their point, at least Mike Florio's being honest. They're not used to the Browns being good, and I think you're seeing that from a lot of the things nationally. It's like, no, they kind of figured this thing out finally.
Yeah, it's going to take people a while to associate the Browns with winning, right? When you have only associated and interacted with the Cleveland Browns as a losing franchise, it's going to be a difficult thing for people to come to grips to. But eventually it will happen. The wins will happen. And this is why winning on national TV when you're worried about perception like this is an important thing.
All right, so this from NFL.com, ranking make or break candidates for the 2024 season. Number 1, they go T. Higgins, wide receiver from Cincinnati. Number 2, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback for Miami. Number 3, Dak Prescott, quarterback. Number 4, they go Deshaun Watson. Browns have not received anything close to quality return on their investment. If that continues, might see Cleveland consider alternative options before long, making 2024 absolutely pivotal year for Watson. Number 10, they have Nick Chubb. Chubb will turn 29 in December and needs to return healthy and prove he can still produce, both for his future and the immediate fate of the Browns. Let's start with Watson. He has not, they haven't gotten what they paid for, but a lot of it's been injury. The suspension was longer. I mean, if you have the Browns under truth serum, I don't think they expected 11 games. They probably expected significantly less. So you had a longer. You had a longer than expected suspension and injury.
Yeah, I mean, due to suspension and injury, he's played about 11 out of the 34 games that they expected him to be able to play in this time period. And that's why the return on investment just hasn't seemed like it's there. I'm pretty sure if we lived in a world where Deshaun Watson did not get suspended, did not have this controversy following him, and did play immediately once he got traded to the Cleveland Browns and got get through all of this stuff in year 1, we probably would have been very happy with what the trade would have gotten. But when you've only gotten 11 games out of it, you're still kind of waiting because we're still within that first season of the shot. We haven't even got 17 games out of him yet, right? So it's hard for us to even get a read of what he's going to be at. So he's going to be a question mark until he stays healthy, plays that full season's worth of games, and really like gets a chance to actually be judged based on what he's doing at the quarterback position, because his samples have been so few and far between that it's hard to get a real read on what he's going to be. Nick Chubb, on the other hand, turning 29, he does play running back. I always caution people, like, if we use these averages to dictate what's going to happen with not average players. Nick Chubb is a guy who has defied averages his whole career, so I wouldn't expect him to succumb to them right now. We'll see what happens with Nick.
Yeah, I mentioned last week in one of the shows that we did. Somebody pointed out Adrian Peterson came off of an ACL, MCL tear, and had like a career year, was over 2,000 yards. I don't necessarily know you can expect that from Nick Chubb, but you could expect him to be pretty strong.
I would, again, it's like we fall into the thing of, oh, he's going to be like an average running back coming back from this. Is like, he's probably still going to be Nick Chubb, right? He's probably going to produce close to a Nick Chubb level. I expect him to do so. Nick Chubb's game isn't one that's super predicated on his explosiveness and his shiftiness, even though that's a big part of what he does bring. So I think even if he does lose a little bit there, he can adjust. And he's a great athlete, and he's a great player, great football mind. I'm pretty sure he'll figure out how to compensate in real time for what he might not have anymore after the injury to what he still does have.
All right, so these are running back explosion rates in 2023. This from Ian Hartsett's Twitter. Jerome Ford, 11% explosive run rate, 27% for loss or no gain. Dante Foreman, 11% explosive rate, 20% for loss or no gain. Kareem Hunt, 4% explosive rate or run rate, 1.9% for loss or no gain. Now, explosive run rate, carries that gained 10 or more yards. When Nick Chubb was healthy, so that was 2022, he was among the most explosive runners, 15.6% explosive run rate. Again, 10 or more yards per carry. Shows you one of the things that you're kind of missing, and it kind of shows you, the no gain or loss rate are concerning with Ford and Foreman.
Yeah. Ford and Foreman, to me, are signings that you make because you're pretty confident Nick Chubb's going to be available for the whole year, because they're guys who can be really good at number 2 and number 3, but not necessarily guys you want to super rely on all the time, because they're a little bit inconsistent with their ability to gain yardage on a consistent basis. They're not Nick Chubb, where Nick Chubb is pretty consistent, not just gaining those explosive plays, but pretty sure he's pretty good at avoiding being tackled for loss as well. So, yeah, you do worry about that. But I think that Nick Chubb's going to be a huge part of what they're going to be doing this year on the ground game.
All right, I know you've addressed this in your show. Best kept secret on the Browns, do you think?
The best kept secret on the Browns is Donta Foreman, because I think we don't figure him into the run game, right? Like with Donta Foreman, that is somebody who averages 4.4 yards per carry on first down situations. The Browns last year had abysmal numbers. I think Kareem Hunt was at 1.7 yards per carry on first down. If you bring up Jerome Ford, I believe he was at like 3.2 yards per carry on first down. They were awful there. What the Browns have gone out their way to do is find guys who could be productive on first down, right? Donta Foreman and Jerry Jeudy, right? Those are both guys who can get the ball, get you 5 yards on first down. That was their biggest problem last year. They had to go into stick and throw to David Njoku to get 5 yards on first down eventually at some point during the season, because they just could not trust anything else. So that is one of the big things that the Browns want to make sure they have plenty of options, that if they need 5 yards on first down, which they will plenty of times, they can get it.
So Foreman, the interesting stat with him, if he carries the ball 15 times in a game, and he's done that throughout his career with the Panthers and I think it's Texans and the Bears, he averages 80 yards when he carries the ball 15 or more times, he ends up getting 80 yards. That's productive. That gives you second and short an awful lot.
There's a lot in Donta Foreman's like overall production numbers. If you look at his last 310 carries and you compare that to Derrick Henry, and if you compare that to Najee Harris, he actually has the better numbers of the three backs. Like he has the better yards per carry, he has the better rushing numbers. Like there is numbers that suggest, hey, you could make Donta Foreman your feature back, and he might be somebody who's pretty good with a lot of carries. But yeah, he's definitely more than just like a guy trying to make the team.
All right. So again, I know this from your show. Who do you think calls the plays for the Browns in 2024?
I don't care who calls the plays. I just care that whoever calls the plays is the one that's like has, let's call it, majority ownership of the offense, right? Like that's what matters. Is the guy who has 51% stake in this offense, the guy who's signing off on the play sheet, because the play sheet's more important, is that the guy calling the plays? Because that's who should be calling the plays. The guy responsible for the play sheet should be the one who is calling the plays, because that's how you get questions answered quickly, right? A lot of the stuff with calling plays is logistical, right? Sometimes teams will prefer to have a guy on the sideline call the plays, because if something goes down with the comms, it's easier to get the play in if the coach is on the sideline, and Kevin might be the head coach. He's on the sideline, so he might end up being the guy who calls the plays, because that has more fail safes involved than if Ken Dorsey, who likes to be in the booth, is the one calling the plays. Now, I don't know where teams are, like the level of communication, the level of antenna technology we should have. We should be beyond that, but it still happens plenty of times. So it might be a comms thing. It might be due to something else, but a lot of what goes into play calling is making sure that you can get a call played. A play called with like 20 to 15 seconds on that play clock, so that your quarterback has enough time to do some pre-snap stuff and check in and out of whatever it is. All the play caller is doing is picking from a sheet of recommended plays that the entire offense put together. So if you think that anything Ken Dorsey would call is much different than what Kevin Stefanski would call, it's not true. They're all picking from the same play sheet. It's just a matter of who's in charge of telling the quarterback that play. It's more logistical than it is strategic.
Yeah, and people keep trying to ask Kevin Stefanski about the play calling, and he's doing a masterful job of not answering that, because I believe him when he says he doesn't. They haven't decided that. They're not at that point yet. They're still installing the offense. So it'll come. And you know what? If he wants to call the plays, that's great. If he doesn't, if he wants Ken Dorsey to call the plays, that's great too. I'm with you. Who calls the plays is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and it's funny how we like hold it around like he's just like, we're making it seem like Kevin is waiting to pass off the golden keys to the offense to whoever it is that is going to call the plays. And I bet Kevin's just like, yeah, we'll just figure out what works in the preseason, what makes more sense to get the play call any quicker. I think that's really what it's about. They're going to wait to the preseason. Does it make sense? Does Ken communicate well with Deshaun Watson in his helmet? Is that stuff going through smoothly? Logistical stuff is what's going to determine that more than anything.
Quincy, Carrier, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. What do you think about signing Mike Vrabel to a contract as assistant head coach, or give him some kind of title? And I think we need to keep that guy around. What's your opinion on that, David? Love you, brother. Be safe, you and the family, and summer's coming. Love you, man.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I would love nothing more for the Browns to find a way to keep Mike Vrabel around. I think I don't think he'd do that. I think he's going to be a head coach probably next coaching cycle. I'm surprised he didn't get a head coaching job now. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the NFL.
Mike Vrabel didn't take this position with the Cleveland Browns because he's trying to get locked up for the next couple of years. He took this job because it's a quick thing he could do, come back to an area he's very familiar with in the Ohio area. He's also close to Ohio State, and wait for the right opportunity to come about while still also being able to not be a full-time coach. Like, I think Mike Vrabel is doing exactly what Mike Vrabel wants to do, because if Mike Vrabel wanted to be an assistant coach on the Cleveland Browns coaching staff, he could have been that. I'm pretty sure the offer would have been there for him, but this is what makes sense for Mike. And he's doing whatever Mike wants to do at this point because he can. He's Mike Vrabel.
Well, yeah, and it keeps him front and center. It keeps his name, with NFL types. So, again, I think it's great. He's one of the best head coaches in the NFL without question. I know you dealt with this on your show. What do you think he's adding to the Browns right now?
I think he's just coming in and just being another resource for everybody, right? I don't think he's like designing defenses or really doing like any of the hard work that you would expect like a actual coach on the team to do. But I think he's being a sounding board. He's going to point something out if he's like, hey, that makes it really easy for the quarterback to see that you're going to be in this coverage from my experience, or this is what happened to me in Tennessee when I tried to install it like this, or, when I went against Deshaun Watson, this is what I like to do to kind of throw him off his game. So you might want to get him to be used to this, like stuff like that, where he can lean on his experience and give you guys some suggestions that may or may not work. He's going to be a sounding board. He's going to be a resource. I would not expect like Mike Vrabel to be out here like drawn up blitz designs or something like that, like something more technical, but he's going to provide another experienced former player, former head coach kind of voice for guys to lean on. Maybe there might be a locker room thing where there's like a weird situation with two guys and Mike Vrabel might know how to settle that, and he's called in to do that. It's just things like that. Things are a little bit more around the periphery than like the technical.
Yeah, a little bit of he's another set of eyes. I mean, the other thing is he may see things. Remember, Jim Schwartz was an assistant, same kind of thing for him. So those guys have a very good working relationship. And, I mean, I'm sure Jim Schwartz will be bouncing stuff off of him as well. Defensively, game plan type stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And just maybe it's like, how do you even teach it, right? Like, how do you get this through? This guy's not understanding what his responsibility is, or he's having a hard time there. And maybe Mike Vrabel might be the guy who can speak to him and make that player understand exactly what the responsibility is, better than Jim Schwartz can. Just, again, another voice, another guy in the room to help you out. I don't think he's trying to be in charge of anything. No. Or anything like that. I just think he's just trying to help out however he can in his free time. Because he's also worked for a while. Like, Mike Vrabel deserves to like have some downtime, work part-time, and kind of be with his family and stuff. Like, he might just be trying to like take it easy for a little bit. I wouldn't blame him.
All right, so Bleacher Report. Every team's most important training camp battle for 2024. For the Browns, they say wide receiver. Success of the 2024 Browns will depend almost entirely on Deshaun Watson remaining healthy and delivering at least above-average quarterback play. We saw how dangerous this defense can be under Jim Schwartz. Watson and the offense will have to catch up. That's why it's going to be crucial for the team to figure out its receiving roles throughout the summer and into training camp. Yeah, they got to figure a way to unlock the passing offense and make it a little bit better. I don't know that this roster's pretty good, I guess, is where I'm at. But, yeah, if they figure out how to unlock the passing game and take it to another level, they're going to be a team that's really hard to deal with.
Yeah, they figure out the passing game. They become a Super Bowl contender. They're already a playoff contender, regardless of whatever you get from the quarterback position. Again, they went to the playoffs last year with 5 different quarterbacks starting for them. I think they proved last year that their success is not dependent on the quarterback position entirely. Now, their ceiling is, right? You're only going to get so far without great quarterback play in the NFL. So you do need Deshaun Watson to step up if you do want to reach a elevated level of success. But yeah, this defense is great. If you can get more consistent play out of the wide receivers, some consistent offense going on top of that, then I mean, like, you have the best defense in the NFL. You have pretty good special teams, and if you add a top 7 offense there, then yeah, you have one of the best teams of football.
All right, so this one from CBSSports.com. Every NFL team's most notable offseason departure. For the Browns, they go offensive line coach Bill Callahan. One of the strengths of the Browns in recent seasons has been the offensive line. Unit was only looking up at the Eagles in terms of efficiency last season, so it'll be fascinating to see how they perform without Callahan in the picture. Keep in mind that offensive line was banged up. Tackles, you were on your fourth and fifth tackles. So I could get where you would say that. Having said that, I think they got a pretty good offensive line coach in Andy Dickerson, too.
Yeah, I think Andy Dickerson's a good offensive line coach, and the question isn't, like, if you get a lot of injuries on the offensive line, I think that's where you'll miss Bill Callahan more. But as long as your offensive line stays healthy, like Bill Callahan leaving is not going to turn Joe Bitonio into a scrub or Wyatt Teller into a scrub or DeJuan Jones into a scrub. They have studs on that team already at the offensive line spot. It's just a question of if they stay healthy. They have some good depth there. Like if they get extremely unhealthy like they did last year, it might become more of a problem. But as far as where they are right now, yes, it does think that Callahan is not here. You would prefer to have him, but I think also they're in the right spot to be able to move on from a guy like that and be fine.
When you look at the offensive line, knowing what we know relative to changing up the offense, do you expect Andy Dickerson and the Browns to ask the offensive line their blocking to be just a little different?
Yeah, I mean, like just looking at how Andy Dickerson liked to run the ball last year is a little bit different than what Callahan and his team was doing. And I think that's kind of the idea, right? If you're going to change up this passing attack to live more out the gun, you're going to want to run more out the gun. And I think that's going to be something they're going to focus on. If you're going to change this passing attack to use a lot more motion, then you're going to want to incorporate those same motions into the run game to make teams guess on what you're going to do. So, yeah, I think all of that's going to be a little bit different. But, I mean, like, look at some of the guys you have on this team. Joe Bitonio, 10-year vet, he's seen every system that you could put at him. Same thing with, like, Wyatt Teller. He's been on a couple teams. He's seen all the systems. Like, DeJuan will learn, but this will be closer to what he did at Ohio State, so I don't think it's going to be super unfamiliar for him. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be different, but I think these offensive linemen that you had have seen different before, and they can do different.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside to a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the Browns roster. Take a look at the projected starting lineup. It's pretty good. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Chris Sims from Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports, about Deshaun Watson and this Browns roster in 2024.
I don't know what to think of Deshaun Watson. I don't. It's another year last year where he didn't play very much. And every moment we thought, ooh, it looks like he's about to turn the corner and start playing at a high level, he got hurt and couldn't play. So, yeah, and there's things about his game that, as I look back at last year, again, for my quarterback rankings and things, go, hey, this still ain't the old Deshaun Watson. He's still not there. He's not. And this is the first year I'm going into this going, I don't know. Is he going to regain it? I'm not sure what to think of him right now. I'm not. But if he gets it even close to what we saw with the Houston Texans, to your point, Mike, I mean, they are the real deal Holyfield. It's one of the better O-lines in football, right? Their running back room, okay, Chubb's not 100% healthy, but it's still good. We know the receivers as a group, damn. Njoku at tight end. We know the D-line and the pass rushers, legit. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's an all-pro caliber middle linebacker for my money. And then they got arguably the best three corners on one team in all of football with Newsome, Emerson, and Denzel Ward. So, yeah, they're ready.
Quincy, that's fair. And I get why people, and Chris Sims was a guy I've talked to him the last several years at the Combine, and he's a guy, until this year, that was convinced Deshaun Watson was going to come back. So I get it. Until Deshaun Watson goes out and does it, some people will have questions.
Yeah, I mean, like until he plays more than 6 games in a row, people are going to have questions. Like anybody who has not played more than 6 games in a row in the last 2 years, people are going to have a ton of questions about. So yeah, it is fair that people are going to have questions about Deshaun Watson around the league. Pretty sure his own teammates are like, hey, man, like, what does it look like if he does stay healthy for more than 6 games? What does it look like if he plays a whole season? It's fair to ask those questions when it's been, since 2020, since he has played a whole season. So I don't really blame Chris Sims for, being skeptical of it. Because, I mean, even we are skeptical of, like, can he stay healthy? We hope he can. We're pretty confident that if he does, he'll play good football. But as far as what he looks like when that does happen, we all ultimately don't know. We have some hypotheses on where that goes, but we don't really know because we haven't seen it yet in the Cleveland Browns uniform. I think that's what we all want to see. We want to see him stay healthy, put consecutive games together, and put a body of work that we can identify as, okay, this is what Deshaun Watson is right now.
I have the sense, and tell me if you do or not, and if you don't, that's fine. Just say so. I have a sense this is really the first year where Kevin Stefanski is trying to cater the offense to Deshaun Watson. They're trying to play to his strengths more so than they have in the past. Fair, or do you disagree?
I would say this. I don't think this is the first year they tried to do that. I think this is the first year they're properly equipped to do that. Because I don't think that the staff that they had the last few years on the offensive side of the ball were really equipped to adapt to Deshaun Watson's style because they weren't really that familiar with what Deshaun Watson's style is and what that means for a team trying to cater an offense around it. They were more familiar with guys like Joe Flacco, guys like Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield's skill set and building an offense around that. So you had a bunch of people who were used to that, trying to build a spread offense that Deshaun Watson can work with, and it just did not work. Now you brought in Ken Dorsey, you brought in I was about to call him Tommy Tuberville, not Tommy
Rees. Tommy
Rees. Yeah. Tommy Rees. You brought in all these guys who are super familiar with mobile, bigger quarterbacks who can also play in that spread system. And now you're building an offense around Deshaun Watson with people who really understand what that means. So I think the effort was there. When Deshaun Watson came in 2022, they were running RPOs and trying to just copy and paste what he did in Houston. It didn't work. And I think they tried to do a version of that last year and it still didn't work. And they just finally said, hey, we got to get some guys in this collaboration process that are experienced at building an offense around somebody like Deshaun Watson instead of trying to have all of our guys adjust to trying to do what Deshaun Watson does. So I don't think that they haven't tried to. You pay $230 million, you're going to try to build an offense around how that guy plays. It's just I don't think they've had the right personnel in place to be able to successfully make that adjustment. And I think it'll look a little bit different now because these guys should know how to build an offense around Deshaun Watson. They've done something like that before.
All right, this is from PFF, projected every team starting lineup ahead of the 2024 season. So now they list 12 guys on offense and defense. If the Browns were able to play with 12, I like their chances to go to the Super Bowl, but I digress. It's a pretty nice skill set. I get Cooper and Moore haven't produced in the NFL level. You got to like what you see. The defense, and they list the 3 cornerbacks and 2 safeties and 5 defensive linemen as well with 2 linebackers. When you look at that, there's not a whole lot of weaknesses there.
Yeah, and I would argue Jerry Jeudy's production as he has in the NFL, the 800 to 900 to low thousands guy he's been throughout his career, that is a huge get for the Browns in their receiving production because they did not have somebody opposite of Amari Cooper who could get that level of production last year. Like Elijah Moore wasn't close to that. Like outside of David Njoku, who you still have on the team, you didn't have a real number 2 wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy, if he doesn't improve at all, is a real number 2 wide receiver, a real number 2 option, and a guy who's going to add up to 800 to almost 1,000 yards of production to this team receiving wise. That's a real slept on ad. Like, I think so many people are caught up in the potential of Jerry Jeudy and the perception of him that we forget that what is there is still a very productive player. Like, that's early Brandon Cooks level production Jerry Jeudy has given you. And we'd be thrilled to add Brandon Cooks to this team, right? But you just throw Jerry Jeudy's name in front of that production and it completely changes how we feel about it. So yeah, I think that's one of the most slept on things about that starting lineup is, hey, last year you were running out of Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, and then Cedric Tillman in trip sets. And now your trip sets are just massively upgraded from having Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore there with David Njoku as a viable option on that other side. And now you have 3 guys on that receiving core who can get 800 or more yards.
And the way I view people looking at Jerry Jeudy, they're comparing Jerry Jeudy to the guy that was drafted 15th overall. Same thing that Browns fans do relative to Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills, pretty good left tackle. When you compare him as a 10th overall pick, it's the same thing with Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is a pretty good wide receiver. I don't know that he's the 15th overall pick, but we'll see. You know, he still has time to develop.
I would say, too, outside of just being the 15th overall pick, he went in front of Justin Jefferson, which I think is more important, right? When you have that player who's going to be like a top-tier level guy, and you say, oh, we could have had him, right? When the Browns fans do it, they point to Tristan Wirfs. That's the thing. If Jed Wills went 10th, but Tristan Wirfs went 8th, we wouldn't be complaining about Jed Wills as much. Same thing with Jerry Jeudy. If, like, Justin Jefferson just doesn't go after him and he goes before after Justin Jefferson, I don't think people are on his back as much.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. All right, so this, before we go to break, this is from Dov Kleiman, turnover differential the last 2 seasons. 49ers are number 1. They were plus 23. Cowboys plus 20. They're number 2. Ravens and Bengals were tied for 3rd, plus 16. Giants and Steelers tied for 5th at plus 15. The Browns are tied for 24th with the Raiders and Vikings, minus 10. You see the teams that are below them, and the one that really stands out, though, is the Chiefs. So the Chiefs were able to overcome that. Browns gotta improve in the turnover differential if they're going to take that next step as well.
Definitely, you want to clean that up there, especially. But that's also kind of why having a great defense is super important, because what do the Chiefs and the Browns have in common outside of both making the playoffs last year? Despite a ton of turnovers, they have great defenses, and great defenses can just allow you to live with that level of turnovers. Now, if you don't have that level of turnovers and you have a great defense, then you have a great team. So, that's the next level that I think both are trying to get to. I think we can all agree, like the Kansas City team that got to the Super Bowl and won it last year, we don't really categorize that as one of the great Kansas City teams. That was just like, hey, they're just champions. They just found a way to win every game that they played in the postseason. But yeah, that's going to be number 1 for the Browns, and that's what they hope Deshaun Watson brings to this team, is he stabilizes the offense and doesn't turn the ball over. And if you look at what he did when he was out there, he didn't really turn the ball over too much. So hopefully that's something that stays true.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Now I'm going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Frank from Cleveland. I'm back to bug your brother. Couple quick questions. Jamari Trash, if I recall, wasn't there a player with the Eagles, wide receiver back in the day, James Trash? Is there any relationship there, or can you correct me if I'm wrong? And number two, at linebacker, what's going on with our boy Diabate? I'd like to see him break the starting lineup with JOK and Hicks. Give me your thoughts, bro. Love you, man. Be good, be safe, you and the family, and I'm back to bug you. Love you, brother.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, we did look it up. There was a James Thrash that played for the Eagles, not related to Jamari Thrash. Diabate, he played well in the preseason. I'm sure he is in the mix to try to win reps. That's going to be interesting. You know, you've got Watson, who they like. Diabate can run. With the new kickoff rules, that's a guy that I think will be on special teams as well.
Yeah, it's more than likely special teams. The one spot available for a linebacker that you would consider kind of a starting spot is the Sam spot. He's a little light to be a Sam linebacker, right? Like that's pretty much like an extra edge rusher / run stuffer. And Sione Takitaki is the one who held that role down. So you want to have somebody similar to that. I think that's going to be Nathaniel Watson, who had 10 sacks at Mississippi State last year. Yeah, I think Diabate is going to find his way to be a productive member of this team in the new kick return rules. And I think that's a good role for him, especially for somebody who was undrafted last year.
Yeah, and he can run. You know, we saw he can run. And so, again, he's going to get the opportunity to earn, carve out a role. I know you've addressed this one. I'm curious. Should the Browns try to sign Michael Thomas? Still out there, wide receiver, had some productive years with the Saints.
No, we shouldn't. But I like Michael Thomas. Like I don't remember anything that he really. I don't think of Michael Thomas as what he did as a pro. I always just go back to like he was on those weird Buckeye teams that were like. They were like as mediocre as Ohio State got in that era. It was like the tail end of the Tressel run. It was that 1 year of Luke Fickell, I believe. And then I think he had 1 year with Urban Meyer. But he was always just such a solid player. And, I got a soft spot for some of those Ohio State players that played during that era of the team, like Braxton, like Kenny Guyton. And, I would like to see Michael Thomas get another shot out there. Just not on the Browns, though. Maybe like on the Cardinals.
All right. This from PFF. Top 32 safeties entering the 2024 season. They go Antron Winfield Jr., the Bucs 1, Kyle Hamilton, Ravens 2, Jesse Bates, Falcons 3. They list Grant Delpit at 22. Began 2023 back-to-back 90-plus PFF grades. Was PFF's highest-ranked safety, 11th highest-ranked safety, Week 9. Performance tailed off a bit. Season ended early. Still finished as the 31st-ranked safety in PFF overall grade. I think that's a little low for him. Just your thoughts. Delpit, I thought, played pretty well.
Hey, if somebody was the 11th ranked safety and then all that happened was they got injured, they should probably be the 11th ranked safety. But because it's not like Grant Delpit played bad at the end of the season. He just did not play at the end of the season. I think Grant's going to be a top 10 level safety for sure. He plays kind of a weird safety role where he's not like a true free or true strong, but I think he's really effective in coverage too against tight ends.
Yeah, and you know what? Jim Schwartz knows exactly how he wants to use him. We saw that last year. It's not a coincidence that he kind of took it up a level in that system.
Yeah, and I think also it's just somebody figured out what he's good at in the NFL, right? Like that's a journey a lot of guys have to figure out. It's like, hey, you were this good at doing this thing at college. The NFL, it's a completely different game. Now you have to refigure that out. Like Grant Delpit was a free safety in college. He was like Ed Reed type of player in college. And then he comes to the NFL and now he's a run stuffer. Like it's just a different game. So I think it just took a while for him to figure out where is he going to be? What kind of player is he in the league and how to fit in?
All right, before I let you go, mini camp coming up Tuesday through Thursday next week. What are you paying attention to? Is there anything that you want to see? I know it's mini camp. Yeah. It's not like they're going to be in pads. It's still May or June now. But what do you want to see?
I'm not going to be as interested in what's going on the practice field. Like you're going to see Deshaun maybe throw a little bit more Maybe he does a team drill. Maybe he doesn't. We'll see what's going on with Nick Chubb. If they let him like ride the bike on the sideline or something, like if he shows progression there, that stuff's going to be whatever that is. Where I'm going to look at is, hey, this is going to be the first time in the offseason that they've had Amari Cooper in the building. And I think that's going to be where we're going to figure out, like, hey, are we going to extend Amari Cooper or not during that week? Like what the smoke is looking like for that, because they're most definitely going to have conversations about that. You saw it took a couple weeks of Andrew and Kevin being back in the building to work out that extension. It's going to be the same thing with Amari. There's a reason Deshaun has not restructured his contract yet. They usually want to restructure him once they're done with everything they want to do in the offseason. So, the reason they're holding out on this whole Deshaun Watson restructure is because they're waiting to see if they can get something done with Amari Cooper. And if they do get something done with Amari Cooper, it'll probably, like, we'll figure out if that's going to happen or not this week.
Yeah, and again, that was complicated by Justin Jefferson's, $35 million a year, $110 million guaranteed. So that market kind of blew up again.
Hey, and look, that's why Coop ain't at practice right now, right? Like, that's why Coop is waiting until the mandatory period, because he knew guys were going to get paid, and he was wanting to play his leverage out correctly. So, all of this is happening for a reason. I know people are wondering why Coop's not at OTAs. I don't think he's holding out or anything. I just think he wants to wait to negotiate until he has the most information available. And I think once he gets to mandatory OTAs, he'll start to negotiate a little bit. We'll see where he is price wise. But yeah, man, 35 a year for a wide receiver.
Yep.
Feel like we're losing the plot. But
yeah,
good for Justin Jefferson.
And you still got Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb. So it'll be interesting. Quincy, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Quincy Carey, make sure you check him out. Always really insightful Brown stuff. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. We're just outside, take a quick time out. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, the Barking Browns podcast. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I'm extremely happy that Stefanski and Barry got their extensions. This signifies that the organization is finally in good hands. But let's be honest, the bar was set extremely low for both of them to clear it. 37-30 record is, slightly above average. 2 playoff appearances with 1 win isn't all that great, but for this franchise, it is pretty good. But now comes the next step in their evolution. which is to be a consistent winner and a consistent playoff threat. The Browns have to win the division and have success in the playoffs. I mean, once again, I am absolutely thrilled that they both will be here for the long haul. But it's time to elevate that bar. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, it's a fair assessment. So remember, you went from 1-31. So from 1-31 to 37-30, that's pretty impressive. But it's hard to be a consistent playoff team. And to Rico's point, you got to win the division because that gets you a home playoff game, and that likely gets you deeper into the playoffs.
Yeah, he's right. The bar was lower, but if you compare those guys to what preceded them, I think the closest was Crennel with 64 games. Stefanski's coached 70 and already won 14 more games than Crennel. I think if you want to judge him like other Browns coaches and regimes. I think you look back further. I think you're looking at Belichick, who coached 82 games, and they've already got one more win than Belichick did during his regime. Or someone like Marty with 77 games he coached, he's got 8 more wins than what this regime has. So I think that's properly slotted, but also the expectations should be where they were when Marty Schottenheimer was here. Deep runs in the playoffs, consistent winning, division titles. That is what I expect for this regime going forward.
Yeah, I'm one of the few guys that was around and covering the Browns when Marty they fired him after a playoff loss. Just Marty Schottenheimer, the franchise was so used to being in the playoffs, they didn't win a home. I believe it was a home playoff game against the Houston Oilers. I think was his last game. They fired him after the game, and I was like, think about that. Fired a coach after a playoff season. But the question, it's hard to consistently make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. You look around the league, there's only a handful of teams that consistently do it year in and year out, regardless of circumstance. But that's the goal. That's the expectation, is for you to become one of those teams. The ownership saw what they needed to see out of this regime, and this is the duo that they want leading this organization going forward.
So I know you wrote an article and take us through it. So Barry and Stefanski, future is no longer tied to Deshaun Watson. Take us through kind of the thought process there.
Well, just what a difference a year makes. If you just think about 2022, all the heat from the Deshaun Watson trade, the subsequent suspension, the subpar play, a disappointing 7-10 finish. And then you go into 23 thinking, well, if they can't get the most out of Watson, this doesn't bear well for their future, And then 23 happens. You get a mixed bag, inconsistent play from Watson, and injury. But then the ownership saw what they needed to see out of Stefanski and Barry, how they navigated those waters. And I'm sure, internally, there was probably some panic there, but externally, that wasn't what happened. The players heard the same message day in and day out, put the blinders on, go 1-0, and that just echoed throughout the organization. When you have that kind of steady hand driving the ship, you can have results the way that you saw them just handle adversity. Not just Watson, but all the injuries. But the expectation was still the expectation to win games. And that's how they took the field in each and every week. So now what else has happened this offseason? Well, the Denver Broncos are eating $85 million in dead cap over the next 2 years just to get out of the Russell Wilson business. So now there's a precedent. So fast forward to 2024, if things go terrible and there's a failure to launch situation with Watson, the post-1st June designation cut for him next year is $73 million. That's not the death sentence you would have thought it would have been just a year ago. So given the extensions being signed, now I think that Watson's on notice. If he doesn't take it to where he needs to take it this year, they won't be moving on from Stefanski and Barry. It'll be Watson.
It's interesting. If the Browns under Kevin Stefanski win 11 games this year, he moves into 3rd place all-time coaching history. And he's behind. There's Paul Brown and Blanton Collier are 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. It's going to take you a while to catch those guys because they coached for a significant amount of time.
If it's a 4-year extension, he can catch Collier just doing what he's doing. 10, 11 wins. That'll get you there if it's a 4-year extension.
All right, let's take a look at this. So this is cornerback rankings for PFF for 2024, the top 32. They go Sauce Gardner 1, McDuffie of the Chiefs 2, Ward of the 49ers 3. They list Denzel Ward at 17. Many talented cornerbacks suffered injuries in the past few seasons. Bug hit Ward 22 and 23. His grades have taken a hit because of it. When he's on the field, the Browns' secondary instantly becomes one of the best in the NFL. 24, Greg Newsome has earned a very respectable 74.4 coverage grade over the past 2 seasons. 21 forced incompletions, tied for 20th at the position over the same time span. In the just missed category, so just outside of the top 32, they have Martin Emerson of the Browns. So, if you think about it, they have 3 cornerbacks, say, in the top 35.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like, if you just look at the rankings, like 17th is actually reasonable for Ward because he has such a history of injury. You just know he's going to miss 4 games. At different points in the season, that's going to happen. But there's not 17 better corners. It's just the injuries have to be taken into consideration. But if you kind of subset it and look at individual skill sets, as running a mirror technique at the line of scrimmage, there's no one as good as Ward. He's like the best in the league at that. And if he could just be available more, I think you would see that respect in that top 10 year in and year out. And then, even having Newsome at 24, I think is reasonable. And what we've been echoing is I believe he's a top flight corner in the league. Problem is, he's the 3rd best corner on this team because it's egregious to leave Martin Emerson off this list. To me, it's mind blowing. He's earned that respect through his play. As a rookie, what he was done, thrown into the fire, swam right away to what he did last year, which I believe should have got him an All-Pro consideration, at least a Pro Bowl.
All right, along those lines, this from Yardbarker, one breakout player for each AFC North team 2024 season, they say Martin Emerson. Emerson totaled 59 tackles, 4 interceptions, 14 passes defended last year. Cleveland's ferocious front 7 make things a heck of a lot easier for the secondary, so Emerson ultimately could take that next step in 2024. Perhaps a Pro Bowl is in his future. The other thing is, in order to be ferocious like Jim Schwartz wants the front 7 to be, you got to have guys that can play the lockdown man coverage in Emerson, Newsome, and Ward.
Yeah, and the thing is, he doesn't need to raise the level of play. He just needs the accolades for the level of play he's already shown. He could have a season slightly less successful as last year and still be worthy of a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. I mean, that's just the level he played out last year. And it, for one reason or another, did not get recognized like it did with other players around the league. Maybe it's because he was taken later in the draft. Maybe it's because nationally, he's considered not as good as Denzel, so they just put him in this other tier. But if you just look at the individual play, he was lights out. I mean, he allowed 0 touchdowns. He was top 2 in QBR when targeted, top 3 in completion percentage when targeted. He played at an elite level. He'll just need to do that again. And eventually they'll be undeniable and they have to give him the recognition.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, the Barking Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside. Take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about Mike Vrabel. Look at some of the coaches that the Browns are going to face in the 2024 season. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and the Barking Browns podcast. Mike Florio, Chris Sims, NBC Sports Pro Football Talk, talking about Mike Vrabel, what he brings to the Browns.
I'm surprised he wanted to do it. He's got to be comfortable in that setting, and Kevin Stefanski's got to be comfortable, and this is only going to make the Browns better, folks. Watch out. The Browns already were a playoff team, and now they've got Mike Vrabel in the mix. New contract for Stefanski, new contract for Andrew Berry, new job for Mike Vrabel. He's loving life, and watch out if you're playing the Browns this year.
It's actually an incredible asset. You got one of the best coaches in the NFL helping out your football team. And yeah, one, Stefanski's got the confidence to go, wait, I'm the man here, and that's just the way it is. Two, Vrabel, like you said, alpha male, all that. But, alpha males don't always have to be the center of attention. Sometimes they know their role, and that's what an alpha male does too. And that's where Vrabel's going to be awesome because, like you saw right there, he don't care. He's got no ego. He's not like, I'm too good to coach the scout team, right? He's there. That's what he looked like he was doing. He's doing the scout team or the third defense and giving them, hey, this is what we're going to play here against Deshaun Watson and the starters. Or he's, hey, I'll be middle linebacker for the day.
Casey, I've said this. I can't believe Mike Vrabel didn't get a head coaching job this coaching cycle. And boy, am I glad that Kevin Stefanski said, hey, you know what? We can use you. And you got the relationship with Jim Schwartz. They touched on it. For Stefanski to be as comfortable as he is, and we know he is, to bring a guy like that in, he's looking to make the team better.
Yeah, at all costs. And it just makes me smile, too, because when this was announced, we didn't know what kind of role it would officially be. They said consultant, so you're thinking advisory stuff. We know he wanted to learn the back end with Andrew Berry. But, to see him in the practice running the scout team, Mike, working with the offensive line and mixing it up. And, they talk about him being great in the meeting rooms. It's just the best sounding board you could possibly have for these coaches and these players. Think if you're a rookie, Nathaniel Watson, looking to make a name for yourself, coming in, trying to be a Sam. And then you look at Vrabel. You got Vrabel to bounce all this stuff off of and to take tips from. This is invaluable. And what this says about the organization, not that even they would bring him in, that he would view them as the launching pad for what's next for him. You wouldn't go to a bad team where all of a sudden your name's going to lose some shine just being affiliated with it. Him coming on board here, he's looking at the future and looking to stay with it, to stay current, to stay in coaching, stay active. And he's doing that with the Browns. If you're a Browns fan, you got to feel great about that.
Yeah, and again, remember, Jim Schwartz did the same thing with him in Tennessee, so there's that relationship. But, yeah, I mean, he's a really good football coach. I know you wrote an article ranking the opposing head coaches on the Browns' 2024 schedule, and there's some pretty good ones. So, number 1, you got Andy Reid of the Chiefs. Number 2, John Harbaugh, just ahead of his brother, Jim Harbaugh. Tomlin, Sirianni, McDaniel, Zach Taylor, Doug Peterson. Those are pretty good head coaches. Those are the top coaches among the top coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, last week I did this exercise with opposing quarterbacks, but I think it's even more helpful to do with head coaches because unlike quarterbacks who may get benched or injured, these are the head coaches you'll face. In that graphic you just showed there, all 8 of those coaches have led a team to a Super Bowl appearance. In fact, of the 14 head coaches you're going to face, 10 of them have led teams to Super Bowl appearances, while 6 have won a Super Bowl. 5 of them have gotten Coach of the Year. Strangely enough, none of them have won 2 Coach of the Year awards. But I think it's a good exercise to look at, and the top of that list right there, Andy Reid. 5 Super Bowl appearances, 3 victories, 2 in a row, going for 3. That's pretty impressive. And you might be facing him in his last season. That's definitely among the realm of possibilities. If you look just inside your division, all 3 of these head coaches have been to the Super Bowl. 2 of them have won it. And I know Taylor got clowned early in his career because he got the job just because he was once in a bathroom with Sean McVay or whatever. But he's proven to be very good at maximizing his talent. And being able to organize and structure his offense to benefit everyone. And then obviously Harbaugh, both Harbaughs. I mean, what an amazing thing to have 2 brothers that are amongst some of the best coaches in the entire NFL. And Tomlin, he's going into his 18th season. Dude's never had a losing season. And you can't always just point to the talent because some of those teams have been talentless and he's still managed to raise the floor of them. So this is just an impressive list of coaches you're going to face in 2024.
And the other thing I would say, you mentioned Andy Reid, and you're absolutely right. The Super Bowls and the appearances. Remember, this was a guy in Philadelphia that they said couldn't win the big game. He kind of disproved that. So it just goes to show you, a little patience with NFL head coaches goes a long way. Before I let you go, minicamp coming up. What are you watching?
Obviously, no injuries. It's always going to be number 1 on my list. But if we have to go on, I'm talking about the continuation of the evolution of this offense. You want to see new stuff. You want to see new motion packages, new usage of the personnel. You have the talent. And if you look around the league at all the tip of the spear offenses, they're all utilizing it. They're all utilizing crazy motion. And you're starting to see that with Jamari Thrash. You're starting to see just different pockets and how they can use their talent. And I'm also looking for players to take another step. You know, I know Cedric Tillman, there's a lot of people talking about him in the last day or two, his physical preparation for this year. But for me, it's all between the ears with him for it to click. But it's there for him. There's definitely a leap that can be made in year 2. So I'm just looking to see all these pieces come together, stay healthy, and just keep implementing this offense and show us new wrinkles.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Pages of Dog Pound Daily. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.